5 of the most influential presidents of the United States. 1. Abraham Lincoln. On November 6, 1860, Abraham Lincoln was nominated for the presidency by the Republican Party with Hannibal Hamlin as his running mate. He ran against the Democrat Stephen A. Douglas, John C. Breckinridge of the Southern Democrats, and John Bell of the New Constitutional Union Party. Lincoln beat all of them, and he became the first president from the Republican Party and 16th president of the United States. During his presidency, Lincoln saved the Union during the American Civil War. His leadership during the war was one of no compromise, but at the same time understanding that he would eventually have to unite the states once the North won the war. His actions eventually led to the abolishment of slavery across the United States. On April 14, 1865, while attending a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., Lincoln was assassinated by the actor John Wilkes Booth. Booth had shot him in the back of the head. Lincoln died the next day, April 15, 1865. Abraham Lincoln, 1809-1865. 2. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Having won 4 terms as president in 1932, 1936, 1940, and 1944, FDR was sure to have a huge impact on the United States. In 1932, Roosevelt ran against Herbert Hoover. Roosevelt carried 57% of the popular vote and 472 electors versus Hoover's 59. FDR was the 32nd president. He easily won his 2nd term and did not publicly ask for a 3rd, but was quickly renominated when his name was put on the ballot. For his 4th term, he was again quickly renominated, but people questioned his health. Roosevelt won by a slim margin, getting 53% of the popular vote and winning 432 electoral votes versus the 99 for Dewey. His leadership throughout World War II was key to our victory. He worked tirelessly to end the Great Depression, including the creation of numerous programs through his New Deal to help Americans get back on their feet. FDR died on April 12, 1945 of cerebral hemorrhage. Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1882-1945. 3. George Washington. As the first president, Washington couldn't help but set precedents that were followed by later presidents. His lack of his desire to be seen as a monarch was an extremely important part of creating a citizen president. Washington retired to Mount Vernon after 2 terms to set a precedent only broken by Franklin Roosevelt. After Roosevelt's death, the 2-term limit was added as the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution. After retirement, he was asked to be the American commander if the U.S. ever went to war with France over the XYZ affair. He never did have to serve because fighting never occurred. Washington died on December 14, 1799, possibly from a streptococcal infection. George Washington, 1732-1799. 4. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was appointed by George Washington to be the first Secretary of State. Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of the Treasury, and Thomas Jefferson often differed. Because Washington was strongly influenced by Hamilton than Jefferson, Jefferson resigned and eventually served as the Vice President under John Adams. In 1800, Jefferson ran in a campaign as the Republican candidate with his Vice President Aaron Burr against John Adams. Thomas Jefferson won, carrying 10 out of the 14 states. He became the 3rd President of the United States. In 1803, Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Territory from France. He sent Lewis and Clark to explore this territory. Through the Louisiana Purchase, the size of the United States doubled overnight. In 1804, Thomas Jefferson ran re-election with George Clinton as his vice president against Charles Pinckney. Jefferson received 164 votes versus Pinckney's 14. He retired after his 2nd term and spent most of his time designing the University of Virginia. He died on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, July 4, 1826, ironically the same day as John Adams. Thomas Jefferson, 1743-1826. 5. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson became president in 1828. He was the 17th president. Jackson won 55% of the popular vote and 219 out of the 286 electoral votes. Andrew Jackson was the first U.S. president who wasn't born into a wealthy family. He also did not have a college education. Because of these reasons, he stood for the common man, which were people who worked hard and didn't make a lot of money like farmers. He was a successful general who led an entire political movement, stood for common man, and had a big impact on American history. Jackson was an active executive who vetoed more bills than all previous presidents. He vetoed 12 bills in his 18 years of being president. During his presidency, Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, which allowed the government to force the Native Americans to move out of the land and go west. After serving his 2 years, his vice president became president and continued many things that Jackson did, and Jackson returned to his home in Tennessee. He stayed active politically until his death on June 8, 1945. Andrew Jackson, 1767-1845.